it seems that there's this binary thing. You either believe in technology or you don't. You either love driving or you don't. And that things are just being placed on both ends because so many topics in our society today are framed as you're in or you're out, right or wrong. And you are, and I'm not just saying this because I'm your friend, but you are one of the only people out there who loves the same things I do, who is intelligently attempting to dissect the statements of the tech sector as they announce with the what do you call it? The promise of the inevitability of various futures. Right. These things. And there's nothing inevitable about technology, except that someone's going to figure it out.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. This episode is brought to you, strangely enough, by another podcast. F1 Fast and Loose with Will Arnett. Do you like listening to the sound of Will Arnett's voice?
Yes.
Do you want to listen to him talk about Formula One racing? Because now you can. Formula One drivers live life in the fast lane on and off the track. And Wondery's new podcast, Fast and Loose F1, hosted by Will Arnett, is here to cover it all. From McLaren to Ferrari to Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton to Daniel Ricciardo, the world's most prestigious and fastest F1 teams challenge each other on the world stage. And on Fast and Loose F1, you'll hear from those drivers, managers, and team owners who get inside access into the high-stakes drama of the chase to win the world's greatest racing competition. Smartless co-host Will Arnett will be joined by two-time world champion, the Flying Finn, Mika Hakkinen. Baller, revealing the high-speed twists and turns after every Formula One race. Listen to Fast and Loose F1 on Amazon Music or wherever you get podcasts, or listen ad-free by subscribing to Wondery Plus in the Wondery app. Hey folks, today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by BERRYMAN Automotive. You know, although you can walk into an auto parts store and find hundreds of lubricants and additives, sealers and parts cleaners, but only one company has made hundreds of those products for over a century, and that's BERRYMAN. Whether you're a professional mechanic or a do-it-yourselfer or somewhere in between, the BERRYMAN name has been synonymous with performance-enhancing solutions like their industry gold standard B12 ChemTool fuel additives made with BERRYMAN's exclusive high-energy solvent technology, or HEST. Hundreds of solutions and 100 years of experience, all from one company. That's BERRYMAN Products. All American-made since 1918, BERRYMAN remains committed to producing products that meet the highest standards of performance, reliability, and environmental responsibility. In fact, here at my business, Westside Collector Car Storage, where we record this podcast, we store over 100 cars. Many of them are in our long-term care. And over that amount of time, if you've heard this in the past from someone else or myself, fuel can go bad. The chemical compounds can break down and gunk up your fuel system. And that's why we use BERRYMAN's fuel stabilizing products and fuel system cleaning products here in our cars to keep these cars ready to drive and have clean, strong fuel systems every time their owners want to take them out. So you'll find BERRYMAN at all major automotive retailers, or check them out at berrymanproducts.com. That's BERRYMAN products.com. We're also brought to you today by Off the Record, OTR, baby. Do not participate in the ecosystem that they want you to participate in. Don't plead guilty when you get a speeding ticket or other moving violation. Call Off the Record. In fact, I use the word call, but you don't really have to call. You can go to offtherecord.com/TST or download the Off the Record app and use code TST10. Off the Record will set you up with a qualified attorney in the area where you got that ticket, the jurisdiction, if you choose to say it that way, And they will fight that ticket on your behalf. You don't have to appear in court. And that way, when they get those points off your record, you now are saving money on insurance because they will jack your insurance rates if you get a ticket and plead guilty to it. That's why you got to call off the record. They have saved so many of our fans money. I regularly, and I'm talking about once a week, get an email from somebody who used off the record and is calling or emailing to thank me for introducing them because it's such an easy service. Once you got the app or once you log in, all you got to do is upload a ticket via a photo from your camera phone or a scan, and they will handle the rest. It's super easy. It's affordable. And with code TST10 on the app or offtherecord.com/TST on the web, we will save you 10% on all off-the-record legal services from now until 2025. Love having these guys around. If I get pulled over, I'm confident that it's not going to become a problem later. Off the Record is the official ticket fighter connector of the Smoking Tire podcast. All right, folks, today I am in Germany with my pal Alex Roy, and we are talking about autonomy. Is it real? Is it fake? Is it coming? Is it not coming? And whatever else we can come up with while whipping down the freeway in an Alpina B8 Grand Coupe going to a secret meeting south of Munich. It's Alex Roy on the Smoking Tire podcast. But here we are. Look at this fucking setting beautiful. In the Alps.
Thank you for setting it up with my back to the view.
You want to switch?
No, I like this.
It's not so we can have the view. It's so they can have the view. And you have this beautiful halo, this glow.
Thank you.
On you.
You know,
Room 303.
You know who else had a glow? Was the Russian oligarch in his lake house this morning before the police arrived.
Dude, so we are in Tegernsee, Germany, in Bavaria, on this beautiful lake. Austria is, you could basically see Austria. Those tops of those mountains back there is Austria. And this is like the German Riviera. It's like the German Lake Como.
It is the German Lake Como. Yeah.
Kind of, right?
Yes, nice.
It's nice. Yeah. This hotel is beautiful. And last night we were having dinner in town. I noticed some new construction, pointed it out. It turns out the new homes that had been constructed there were an oligarch who was raided this morning.
That's the guy.
That's the guy. Same Bozy. So Bozy looked it up. That's the guy's houses. Raided 100 like Interpol officers right down the street from our beautiful hotel here in Tegernsee.
I'm sure he's innocent of all charges. I'm sure he was framed.
I'm sure nobody's been harboring anybody.
Yeah, and I'm sure he had no classified material or anything of any kind.
Nothing. So we're at a conference of sorts, a thing.
How much are we allowed to talk about?
I spoke to Riley this morning. Yeah. We're allowed to talk about where we are and what is going on here,
but not who's present.
No names and no quotes, other than obviously each other, JF and Bozy, who are the present influencers.
And, so if by that standard, those four people are present, be like, so what's the difference between this and any other event?
Nothing.
No difference.
But he said we could say what it is and where we're at. And it's you've been here before, so how would you describe, this is my first time here.
There are, for people who don't attend trade conferences,
there's my first time doing that, by the way.
There's a circuit of conferences. For every vertical has them. In transportation, there are a lot of different transportation conferences, and they're generally open. They're open to the public, but the tickets could be several $1,000s to attend. And in my experience, those conferences are not a good value because it's the same talking heads every time, and it's consultants who are looking for work and corporations who have enormous expense budgets to send people to listen to consultants who want to get hired. I don't believe those. I hate those conferences, and I've spoken at some, and they're pointless. However, this event, run by Riley Brennan and Rob Conabier, Riley has a venture capital fund called Trucks.vc, and
he's been on the show before. He was very interesting.
Yeah, he's great, and Conabier has a fund called Shasta Ventures. This is an outlier, and I don't.
There they are walking by right now. Riley!
And so this event is 50 people. It's invitation only. A handful of people are asked to present. I've presented in the past, although I find that very funny because the other people to me are just another level. And you have some government officials, you have the CEOs of some very major companies, and the CEOs and founders of startups who get to meet each other and talk under Chatham House rules. So
I never heard that term. Do you know the origin of that term?
I'm going to speculate the man was named Chatham.
Basically what it means is no one's allowed to record anything, no video, no audio. This us on the balcony by ourselves is the only recording I'm doing here, other than an Alpina B8 review. And no one gets to. You can use information that you've learned here and discuss things that you've learned, but you can't attribute it to any particular source.
Yes.
I don't know the origins of that, but I've heard that term like 10 times today.
And they're very strict about it. One time years ago, somebody, I think, shared the invitee list externally. Yeah. They're banned for life. And good, because that's one of the problems with a lot of conferences that are meant to be professional, is that no one will actually say anything true. They repeat the same PR, talking points, and they won't answer a direct question. And here, people will. They will.
Yeah. So in the past, have you, because this is like your, how many times have you been here?
I think it's my third. I think.
Have you learned revelatory information, or has it just been oh, that's interesting what people are actually doing?
I don't know if I learned anything revelatory, but the people I met and the conversations I had were of another level.
Oh.
So, when you go to, there's the debate between, remote work and office work,
sure,
and the value of the water cooler. I've never seen a study which quantified the value of the water cooler, but in my opinion, there's a lot of work which is best done solitary and remote, but there are critical things that can only ever be done in person.
Yeah.
And there are some collaborative things, creative things that are best done in person. And the same thing is true of networking. If you go to a conference with 6,000 attendees, you don't know where to go to meet someone by chance.
Yeah.
And if you know exactly where they are and you get there and 50 other people want to meet them, you might not even get a word in.
Yeah.
Here, you have, over the course of 3 days, 50 people, and the goal is that everyone meets each other and has a chance to talk.
That's neat.
So for a value of time, like the ROI on my time coming here, it's incalculably better than any other event in sector. The only other event I've ever attended would come close would be, Mobility Week in Tel Aviv, run by Maniv Mobility, is a like Riley's fund, probably the two most important and best seed stage funds investing in transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Maniv Mobility is the other one, and they're in Tel Aviv, and they have a party.
Interesting.
Where it's very similar, and you hear, when you hear about things like these retreats that private equity firms or other verticals hold, you wonder what goes on there. It's like this.
Okay.
Really,
this is the first of any of these type. I've never been to a networking thing. I've never been to a conference or that. And when Riley told me about this one, I was interested enough. And then when it seemed like the kind of thing that was straight up, I spent a lot of my own money to come here. There's no, they didn't. It's not like a gig. It was time consuming and very expensive for me to get to Bavaria this week. So I'm excited to learn some things. And because a lot of the kind of people that are here are in industries that I am generally very skeptical of. So I kind of want to have my mind changed.
Well, it's because you are an educated skeptic that I think Riley wanted you here. And I'm totally in support of you being here because, in general, it seems that there's this binary thing. You either believe in technology or you don't. You either love driving or you don't. And that things are just being placed on both ends because so many topics in our society today are framed as you're in or you're out, right or wrong. And you are, and I'm not just saying this because I'm your friend, but you are one of the only people out there who loves the same things I do, who is intelligently attempting to dissect the statements of the tech sector as they announce with the what do you call it? The promise of the inevitability of various futures.
Right.
These things.
Yeah.
And there's nothing inevitable about technology, except that someone's going to figure it out. And the question that remains is, is it going to be in a way we like or not?
Right.
Cars were, someone was going to invent the car. Many people invented cars.
Yeah.
It wasn't predetermined that they would be, that they would shape culture the way they did. They could have shaped it very differently.
And I read in Paris Marx's book, about the jitneys, where it was like first there was the car, then there became these sort of gypsy cabs. Then then they figured out a way to regulate that, and there's economies on economies on economies, and the world. They managed to get government intervention, to shape our streets around the car and not vice versa. So
well, there's I don't know if there's a singular book which explains this, but you can see very clearly that the cities on the East Coast and the Northeast, which are the first to be settled and the oldest in the United States, look very different from the ones that are out west.
Pre-car and post-car.
It's very clear. And those political, the mobila political alignments, I don't know what the word is, if there is a word, mean that some things are much harder to change than others in different places.
Yeah.
But I love, there's a guy named Brent Toderian, I think you pronounce his name. He's a Canadian, the former transportation official on Twitter. And he loves showing pictures of Amsterdam in the 60s and early 70s filled with cars.
Packed with cars, right.
And so, and so you see, things can change.
Yeah.
Well, of course
it
things
is possible
can
to
change.
to turn the tide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other, yesterday I recorded a podcast with Jessie Singer, the author of the book There Are No Accidents. And she...
referring to car accidents.
Well, yes, but she actually says that in general there are no accidents. That her book began with an exploration of why there's no such thing as a car accident. There are car crashes.
Right.
And
you can always trace the blame to something.
Yes.
Whether it's human error, road design, vehicle design, etc.
So she would
some
say...
kind of conscious decision was made that set that
in motion. So
right.
she would argue, and you should have her on your show, let her speak for herself, that for any tragedy, there is layered causality. That someone, based on a lens or some agenda, will always want to place blame on a singular thing, but no singular thing is ever solely responsible, because if something else in the chain of causality had been done differently, and the person made a mistake, the crash might not have happened.
Right.
Therefore, the person is not solely responsible. And to place blame for every crash on humans doesn't make sense, because we are capable of learning, inventing, and innovating, and
improving our own skills.
Correct.
As well.
So I asked her, I said, well, what if we just improved our driver education in this country? How much more would that change? She's like, I don't know, but even the countries with the best driver education have crashes, but they also have, in many cases, a system approach to problems as opposed to individualized blame approach.
Well, that's my entire attitude towards autonomous vehicle research. Is one, they always seem to refer to this hypothetical average driver as if that was a static thing that couldn't be moved.
Right.
If we make computers as good as the average driver, but we improve the average driver to be as good as a racing driver, well, that would be better, wouldn't it?
Right.
And that plus we have so much technology and knowledge available now that there are things we could do to reduce road deaths without requiring inventing of a whole new technology and without requiring removing humans from the system. I think there are humans who want to be removed from the system because they'd rather be texting or doing whatever.
Yeah. Well, listen, you and I come from the same camp. I love driving, and
Yeah.
I work in autonomous vehicles, but I also believe in the permanence of humans driving cars somewhere at some time. The only question for me is whether the people who've been exaggerating capabilities of AV and the timelines for AV will harm those who are trying to responsibly and honestly develop AV. The inevitability of AV for me is like not even an issue.
Because I listen to the Dollop podcast a lot, and it's a funny. It's done by people who are from a comedy background, but it's a funny but researched look at our history and cultural figures. And they did one on the Soylent guy, the guy who invented just that gray shake that you drink. And he would go on and on about how you could say it's these new nutrients and eating is a waste of time and you could be much more and it turns out the guy was like the worst cook ever, hated food, didn't even like to taste things, like didn't enjoy food. And so I see that as like, are the people developing AVs, do they hate driving like this guy hated food?
I think some of them do.
Some of them probably do, right?
But I also know many of them who own great cars, and are like waiting to buy a great car. There's car enthusiasts. There's car enthusiasts at the company where I work, and they do exist at other companies. I can't speak for all companies because I wouldn't pretend to speak for the sector. I am not a fan of some people working on AV. I'm just not. But it's like anything. If someone's going to build it, I'd rather it be built by people who are patient and not rushing it.
Yeah,
and people whose agenda isn't to eliminate drivers or driving.
Yeah,
it's to
because they don't say they want to do that. It's always to improve. I guess that's true.
If you go back in time, 3, 4, 5 years from before I joined the AV sector, there were companies out there saying no one's going to drive. My kids don't have a license. And when I hear that, every red flag goes up, because even if these things, when these things work reliably in places they're designed to work, that's great.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the goal should not be to eliminate driving everywhere someday. Look, I've said the same thing for years before I joined the company for which I work, which is there's going to be AV. And then there's going to be, in the future, AV capability on cars we own. And then there has to be something else, too, which is some form of driver assistance I call augmented driving, which, when I'm driving, won't let me crash
the uncrashable car.
The uncrashable car that I own and control. And so that, to me, is an end game that I both want and we should have, which is not the binary point of view foisted on us by people who I think are trying to make headlines and raise money. Which drives me crazy. And so in this crowd,
and people who see fictional movies and work backwards from there.
It's a bit of a funny circle. And have you ever met Alex McDowell? Have you heard that name?
Isn't that the guy from? Isn't that the guy from
Clockwork Orange?
Yeah.
No, that's Roddy. No, McDowell.
Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, that's funny because that's the actor Malcolm McDowell, who also was the bad guy pilot in Blue Thunder.
Right. Yes.
I love that movie. I also confuse him with Malcolm McLaren, who's the music guy. But Alex McDowell, he would call himself a narrative futurist. And he, in his early career, designed album covers for like Depeche Mode, as the Banshees, and the Sex Pistols. But he has since become the world's most respected narrative designer. So when a science fiction film is being written and they need to create a realistic future, so he designed all the interfaces in Minority Report.
Okay, right.
And he also,
I think we've talked about this before. Maybe the last time you were on the show.
And so he. What he does is he goes and speaks to researchers and scientists in various fields, and then tries to place human beings in a world where those things exist, and then work backwards. Like, well, would they actually want it? Would they like it? And if it went wrong, what would they do? And that is reflected in those films. And in what is drawing a circle, then other people out there, venture capitalists and founders, look at those films and they're like, well, that's how it should be.
Right.
Right or wrong. Obviously. And you should ask him yourself how he feels about some of those futures. Because he has a lot to say.
He must be frustrated when people take his fictionalized future and then decide that that's what reality is going to be. Because his fictionalized future fits the written narrative of a movie.
Well, and a lot of science fiction is written as a warning.
Yeah.
In all of Philip K. Dick, he wrote Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And the film is very different from the book. Although the film is great, and the book, maybe the film might be better than the book, but every one of his stories they're not meant to be science fiction. They're like humans in future bad scenario stories. And always
a lot of great, like the Running Man, where prisoners become entertainment in a post-apocalyptic LA. Even Demolition Man, which is a comedy, is after the big quake, super surveillance, hyper censorship.
Everyone eats Taco Bell.
Taco Bell wins the franchise wars.
3 seashells. No one has sex.
Do you know? You know that I have the Demolition Man. What? I have it in my house. I have a Demolition Man themed bathroom.
With 3, and
it has 3 seashells.
We discussed this,
but it also has over the toilet. It has a picture of Wesley Snipes in costume, like doing this like thrusting motion that looks like he's pissing. And I have a storyboard from the movie where they blow out the window in the Oldsmobile 442, which in the storyboard is a Pontiac GTO, not a 442, but. Hannah wanted a themed bathroom in our new house, and so I got a themed bathroom also. Her themed bathroom is hot dogs, and my themed bathroom is Demolition.
I'll use your bathroom.
Very fucking silly.
Have you watched this YouTube channel called The Critical Drinker?
No, but it sounds exactly like something I would really like.
The Critical Drinker is, I think he reviews movies and TV shows. And he does a whole thing about Demolition Man, where he's like, I don't know if he says I think he said it's like this is the last good movie to come out of Hollywood because it's not afraid to offend.
Yeah.
And it's a genuine satire of everything about science fiction.
Yeah.
It's anyway, you should check out that channel.
That movie has aged shockingly well. Yeah. And I don't know if I talked about this on a previous podcast, but I found the props, the print the tickets when you curse, they went for auction.
Really?
And it was one of those Hollywood auctions. It was a pair of them. And there was very little description about what the prop physically did. I mean, we know what it did in the movie. You'd swear and it'd go, and print. You're in violation of the verbal morality and print a ticket. I don't know what the machine itself did. They said it lit up, but besides that, we don't know. Oh, don't sting me, B. And the pre-auction estimate was like $1,500, and I was like, I have a Demolition Man themed bathroom. It's like imagine I turned one of these into an actual toilet paper dispenser. It would be amazing. I was like, I'm feeling silly. I'm in up to $3,500, which really means $5,000, which is way too much money to spend on something so dumb. But I was like. But who has a Demolition Man themed bathroom? So why not go all in, right? So I registered as a phone bidder. You ever bid on something on the phone? It's kind of fun. You get a little helper. They call you when it's time. So this lady, they call me. Okay, you're up next, and I'm listening to the auctioneer in the background. Okay, you're up next. Do you want to go in? I go, I'll wait just a minute. She goes, you tell me. I'm on your team here. There's no. She goes, you tell me. And I go, okay, look, I'm in for like $3,500, but if the bidding gets real hot, maybe I'll go up to $5,000. And she goes, okay, cool, sounds good, no problem. She goes, okay, it's opening at 12. 16, 18, 2,000. This is her talking to me. 2,500, 3,500, 4,500, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. I'm like, what? And it was that fast. I mean, it was 30 seconds. And she goes, are you out? And I go, oh, I'm out. And I go, but can I stay on the phone and listen what this thing is? She goes, of course. $13,800 plus buyer's premium. It ended up being like almost $16,000 for these fucking things. I, of course, do not have them. Someone else had the same idea as me, but has way more money to spend.
Interesting. I think that might become a lot more valuable in the future. If you think about the way this
I almost
country...
bought Anthony Bourdain's watch, too.
Oh, that's probably priceless.
I know. I should have spent the fucking money. I bailed out, and I should have spent the money on it.
What watch was it?
It was a Panerai. And it appears in many key episodes.
Priceless.
And I bailed out at like $12,000, and it went for 30. And I think that was still a steal. I just didn't have the money. Yeah.
That dispenser, though.
Yeah.
So depending on... no matter what happens in this country in the future politically, but especially if the country or if elections move to the right, that thing is going to be priceless. Because there's what was wonderful about Demolition Man is it came out at a time where one could still make fun of both sides of an argument from either side and laugh together with the other side, no matter which side you're making fun of.
Yeah.
Whereas today, a lot of people are incapable of poking fun at themselves and or laughing with the opposition about something that's agnostic.
Yeah.
It's like you can only laugh with your tribe about something that hurts the other.
Sure.
As opposed to, let's laugh, can we all just laugh together about something?
Yeah.
And then that laughter unveils the underlying irony or injustice or whatever, and then brings us a little closer together. That movie still did that.
And that prop is
a symbol. It's a physical symbol of the ability to be agnostic and come together over irony, hypocrisy, and humor.
Yeah.
Which is something that I think is evaporating, although I'm going to be an optimist and say I think we can have that back.
It's interesting about that film because that film has like the bad guy is like a fascist lefty.
Yeah.
you know, it's like a hyper fascist lefty, and then
the other bad guy is us.
Yeah.
What does Wesley Snipes says? How are you gonna use this place?
And Dennis Leary's like, all right with with it. Yeah,
I like it around here.
We need that. But yeah, so,
I mean, that's another thing about that movie is that there's a little bit of us in every character, good or bad.
Right.
And I mean, everybody wants peace and order and laws.
Yeah.
But we also don't want to all eat Taco Bell, and we also want to curse. And we'd like to have sex, and we don't want to use 3 seashells.
Right.
So like,
we don't even know. We don't even know how to use them.
We just know we don't want to be told we have to do something that we already know how to do a different way.
I'll tell you though, when someone goes into the bathroom and sees 3, I can hear them laughing from behind the closed door. Though it is funny to have 3 seashells in your bathroom. But to just talk about the cars in that film, the cars have a self-drive and then a human-driven option. And she says like self-drive or whatever, and then and I think that binary, I drive, now you drive, and then at the crucial sequence in the movie, someone has to wrestle control away from the computer and find an old school non-connected car to do the thing with, to save the day. I feel like that is potentially a metaphor for what we are going to see.
Well, I object to all this middle ground where people don't know. It's called, in technical terms, mode confusion, where people, they may not necessarily know how much automation is working at any one time and whether or not they can trust it is bad. It's not good.
Yeah.
Although I will say, I rented an Opel Mokka.
No, you've pronounced it Mocha, but it's spelled Mokka.
Mokka?
I think it might be Mokka.
Okay. So the Opel Mokka is like a little crossover, and I had no expectations and no optimism about any driving assistance functions, and because other than Super Cruise, GM Super Cruise, and Tesla Autopilot. And I haven't driven Ford Blue Cruise.
Yeah, I just got Blue Cruise update on my Mach-E.
You like it? Does it do anything?
It's not quite as good as Super Cruise. Super Cruise is excellent, actually.
Yeah, I like it.
It's really, really great. It knows where it should work, knows where it shouldn't work, and in the places it should work, it works flawlessly.
So Super Cruise and Autopilot, very different. I think I know how they work, and I enjoy using both of them, and they're very different. And And so I have no expectation of anyone else's ADAS or driver to do anything I like ever. So I generally don't even bother trying. So I turn on the Opel Mocha lane keeping and cruise control.
Because Opel's GM here.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Opel is GM in Germany.
So it's somebody's off-the-shelf system. I don't know whose hardware or software is in the car, and it worked well. I was surprised, and it was one of these. I don't know if I guess it's called like you can activate the lane keep. You turn lane keeping on, and lane keeping engages and disengages on its own when it can. So you pretty much have to keep your hands on the wheel. But what's nice about it is that you can, if you take your hand off for a second, like scratch your nose, it'll generally hold the lane reliably. And I thought that even though it's a kind of passive system, that it actually is assisting me in a way that's helpful, but doesn't let me rely on it too much, so my hands are always in the wheel, which is kind of how it should be. And so one of the folks you're going to meet here at the event is Liza Dixon, who invented the term.
Are we allowed to talk about her being here?
Well, it's too late. I just mentioned her. The godmother, if not the mother, of the term autonomous washing, and she is, a really important person because she gave a name to an idea that is bad.
Greenwashing came first, right?
Greenwashing came first,
from greenwashing,
And so she wrote a paper on autonomous washing, which narrowed like a laser.
Yeah.
And identified the problem with so many driver assistance systems, which lull people into a false sense of security and lead to new types of crashes.
Well, that's why I wrote this after using Super Cruise, and it is really good. I couldn't figure out a good reason for it to exist unless it was for you to play with your phone.
Right.
Or answer a text.
But you can't.
But you're not supposed to.
Right.
But you can. But you're not supposed to. But you kind of can.
Can you kind of?
Kind of can.
So the one I drove years ago, it didn't let you read your phone long enough to be useful.
It does not let you read your phone long enough to be useful. It does let you look at your phone long enough to read a text and respond. But even with the driver monitoring system, it doesn't let you do that. Mm-hmm. But you can't. Your hands don't need to be on the wheel, but they can't be anywhere else.
Right.
What are you supposed to be doing now? And we know from research from very smart people that humans are better at just doing the thing than we are at watching a computer do the thing and being immediately ready to take over in an emergency if something goes wrong.
Right. I mean, unless you're professionally trained, and even if they are, then, you have to give them time limits and boundaries and do it well. Haven't multiple AV research companies? I mean, not to mention Elaine Hertzberg incident with the Uber thing. Multiple AV research companies have determined that even the professionals, when they're put in the car without a co-driver, can get distracted and start playing with their phones and shit, right? The only way to do it right, there's SAE, the Society of Automotive Engineers, has, I think it's called a J3018, which is the best practices list. If you're going to test on public roads, here's the way to do it. There's boundaries, training requirements, and then there's a thing called AVSC, which is the Autonomous Vehicle Safety Consortium, which comprises many but not all of the AV companies, which is very like the Venn diagram of the two best practices lists are very close. And there's limits on how much time you would spend behind the wheel, how many breaks you get. So yes, obviously.
Yeah.
No, I've been through all that training and I have failed it multiple times. And so
I would love to try that training.
I think that could probably be arranged.
Is it how long is the standard training program take? Is it like weeks or is it?
It's week. It's no less than a month.
Really?
And with frequent retraining. But I think you can get a feel for it.
There should be someone should put on a sample course for journalists that's like 2 or 3 days in the style of a press launch, where we at least get an idea of what the professionals should have to go through. I think it'd be I'd love to
I'll look into that. I would support that.
I would love to try it. And at least then I would be able to go, when I yell at these stupid people with Tesla full self-driving that they spend money on, and they think they're testing, they're obviously not testing. But I'd like to at least know what it does really mean to test. You've
seen the Moody Hikmet videos?
Of course. I just did Ed and Moody's podcast.
Oh, last week.
Yeah. We didn't talk about any of this. But Moody's videos on that, are FSD beta testers testing.
Authoritative
and straightforward. Yes. It's not like he needs a bunch of scientific jargon to make his point.
Correct.
Testing is the word testing describes a very specific set of scientific protocols that are not hard to understand. And it's very obvious that if you pay for something and then are just turned loose on the road after a disclaimer with no back and forth connection between you and the engineers, you are not testing.
So, I fully agree. I was trying to explain this to someone who, of course, didn't want to hear anything I had to say, even though
it's not like you work in the industry.
Yeah, it's not like I own a Tesla and I love it. I mean, anyone who's used Waze knows that if you're driving and you pass a police car, in order for you to enter the data accurately, you have like 1 second to do it accurately.
Yeah.
And if the police car is on the opposite side in motion, there's no way to tag it as such.
Yeah.
So, and you have, when you tag police location in Waze, multiple options. It's like same direction, opposite direction. But if you don't tag it right away and you're in motion, you've already moved past
an inaccurate.
It's already wrong.
Point, yeah.
So why?
Do you think Waze, by the way, and I want to come back to what you're saying, do you think they make that harder than it needs to be intentionally?
I don't know.
It's not a great system.
And it hasn't iterated or improved ever.
But go on.
All right, so the reason Waze is not 100% foolproof is it's only as accurate as the inputs of users, and it's only as the density and recency of users determines its usefulness to you. So if no one has driven ahead of you in that location in the middle of the night, there could be a cop there you wouldn't know.
Right.
Therefore, it's not 100% foolproof. Imagine if Waze was the interface for a safety operator of a test AV to enter an edge case.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Waze is actually better than the interface in a Tesla FSD beta car now, because if I'm in my vehicle with Tesla FSD beta and I want to tag something, there's no choices. It's just tag.
That's it.
There's no context. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Which is completely the opposite of the interface for a test specialist in an Argo vehicle or a mission specialist in someone else's car. Whatever you call them, the task and role and training and responsibilities of that person in the car is serious, and their interface and methods and the notes they take and their notation system and what they have access to and what the engineers of the office have access to has context and meaning and so it's just unserious. If you think Waze will protect you from police, then you're as wrong as the people testing FSD beta in Teslas who think they're actually testing.
Yeah, if all you can do is tag and then leave it up to some remote person to figure out what your intent was and then what happened, it's just not how it works.
It's unserious. Speaking of Waze, I had a funny conversation every conversation with George Hotz is funny. You know George Hotz?
Yeah, the Comma AI guy.
Yeah, the Comma AI guy.
I've never met him, but I am familiar with his work.
He would be an interesting guest.
Yeah, I bet.
He said to me, when I first met him, he said, "Alex Roy, I read your book in high school, and I have an idea."
You're like, I feel old.
Yeah. And he's like, nothing would prevent Comma from building a system that would be better than Waze in every way. I'm like, how so? We would do police car recognition via camera on the device. He's like, well, no reason we couldn't. And then I was like, well, hold on a minute. Like, that is interesting.
Yeah.
That's, again, there would be it wouldn't be 100% foolproof.
It would still be pretty cool.
Yeah, it wouldn't. An undercover car might not be recognized.
Right.
However,
I'm just moving this. Watch your foot. Sorry.
It's
lift your right foot up real quick.
It's certainly, you can see that, how far there is to go, iterating every technology. There's nothing's really mature except maybe the elevator, and even elevators there's still things that could be done.
You still have to do service calls sometimes.
Yeah. So what truly drives me crazy is, although I consider myself like very much like a humanist, I believe in the value of humans, the dignity humans need to feel, and the self-respect and sense of purpose people need to have, of course. But I also feel like technology is inevitable. In between is like, on the continuum is technology good or bad for us? We know from social media that that people who thought it was going to bring us together and build consensus were wrong. Yeah. But we also know that it isn't because social media is inherently bad. It's because the algorithms behind some of the big platforms were not meant to bring us together.
Right.
They might have been, but it was decided they would not.
Yeah.
And so what is the transportation version of that? And how can we make, just AV or anything else good and not bad? And that's why when people say, this will be solved next year, this could be anything. I mean, I don't want to, it's not about Tesla, because people have said this in every vertical but every technology. The solution is right around the corner.
Yeah,
it's solvable. It's solved. I hate hearing the word solve, because nothing is ever truly solved. Things are either made better in general or worse.
Oh.
So there's, who designed the Dymaxion?
Buckminster Fuller.
Yeah, Bucky Fuller. So he referred to himself as a trim tab. He said that if he, it's on his tombstone.
The trim tab is on his tombstone?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Or maybe someone made a joke. I'm forgetting if it's on his tombstone.
Maybe his tombstone just looks like a trim tab.
No. My God, there's a guy. One of the last American philosophers, a guy named Josh McManus. I'll ask Josh. So Joshua had his profile. He's a big fan of Bucky Fuller. Had on his profile on LinkedIn, quote, "Call me trim tab." And I asked him why, and he's like, "I'm a big fan of Bucky Fuller, and it's because big things are hard to change alone.
Yeah.
But on a boat, you can trim it. On a plane, you have trim on the wings, and like if you can just make a little difference, and enough people do, big things move.
Sure.
And I think it's really important that we fight. All reasonable people fight against exaggerations and over promises and hype on anything, but not go too far.
There's so much money to be made on over promising.
Money isn't every. Yeah, of course.
No, I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that that's where we're at.
Yeah, it is. But we were there in the 20th century and the 19th century. I love talking about elevators, and I've been rereading the old histories of Otis Elevator.
You literally brought the Otis history book to my hotel room with you.
The Otis sons were tough SOBs. The price fixing, the market control. They would trade shares in smaller competitors, and then let those competitors stay, quote unquote, independent under their own leadership, but price fix everything. And then clients would come and get bids from 7 companies. They'd own all 7, not tell them.
Yeah.
And then, in order to look like nice guys, they would say, well, if you want to go to one of our 6 competitors, it's okay. They're all okay.
No
They're all fine.
Everyone's
but that
great.
8th one,
yeah.
those guys are dangerous.
Yeah.
They would call it I think they referred to competition that they didn't own as slaughter maniacs. Those elevators are dangerous. And you can see echoes of that today, where some of my fellow Tesla owners are out there. Well, FSD Beta will solve everything.
Yeah.
But those other guys, no chance.
Yeah.
You can see this. This is not helpful. It's not helpful.
I just it's weird to me when it comes to those people that they don't necessarily, because that technology. It's weird that people can't separate. This is impressive, because a car that can steer itself on a basic course is impressive. It's not that it's not impressive, but there's such a gap between, okay, this is impressive and this is actually safe to use all the time.
Yeah.
And it's only impressive if you don't consider what a human could do, because like an 8-year-old could do that in a car, like and humans have to pass like basic tests to operate a car, but this software seemingly does not.
You know, I can't speak for all companies, of course, and I'm only representing myself here today. It's hard to do apples to apples comparisons of any automation in a car. ADAS is easier than AV because you can take two ADAS equipped cars and the side by side in the same place. But it is not possible today to take two AVs side by side in the same place, except maybe in San Francisco, where like Waymo and Cruise both operate. But in order to do an apples to apples comparison, you'd want to have them start out in a closed course in an area where they both operate.
Have two AV development vehicles
ever hit each other?
Encountered each other in test zones?
Oh, of course, all the time.
There's overlap?
If you go to, listen, I've ridden in not just Argo vehicles, but I think I've ridden in almost every competing vehicle there is. And if you go to San Francisco and you ride in one, you'll see the others.
Okay.
They're cruising they're at the same intersection, all stop near each other. And it's pretty thick there. Yeah, AV traffic. That's the only place in the world. I want to say it's the only place in the world. It's the easiest place in the world to get into an AV and see another one side by side. In Vegas, you've got Zoox testing, and you've got Motional has AV taxi, but they have what's it called? But they have
Does the Vegas taxi union, how do they feel about that? Vegas taxi union's no joke.
The vehicles, I honestly don't know, but the ones I was in operated in North Las Vegas, which is less dense and harder to get a car. And then the other ones, there are not that many of them. Also, traffic's really thick. I'm not entirely. If one were in the AV business, if only I knew someone in the AV business, and you were looking at cities where you want to go, there's a lot of criteria. Transit deserts,
right?
Lack of access, places where humans are not great drivers. So there are some places more dangerous than others. We all know this.
Yeah.
My insurance in Florida is 25% higher than New York.
Because they're horrible down
So we
there.
do know there's data indicating where people are better drivers and are worse.
Yeah.
And the average driver in Florida is clearly not as good as in other places.
Yeah.
But Vegas is a tough city, and it's probably in many ways unique in that the majority of pickup and drop-offs occur in these hotel valet zones. It's not true of every other city. So it's a unique set of problems.
Right.
I have great respect for companies trying to solve that.
Yeah.
And the wait times and pickup and drop-off zones are very complex. Have you been to Vegas Airport recently?
Not in the last 2 years. Why?
Have you tried getting an Uber or a Lyft at LAX recently?
Oh, well, yeah.
It can be tough.
Yo, super tough.
It can be unpleasant.
It's extremely unpleasant. I don't personally. The only time I will get an Uber at LAX, and this may be what they did at LAX, is you can't get a curbside Uber anymore unless it's an Uber Black. Only the black cars can pick you up curbside. Any other Uber, you have to walk or take a shuttle to this lot that's next to Terminal 1. And once you do that, which depending on where you are requires some effort, there's a whole line of yellow cabs. Old school yellow cabs.
And they're cheaper?
Yes.
Boom.
They're cheaper and they're right fucking there.
Yep.
And I've never had to wait more than 3 or 4 minutes for one.
And
so I just do that.
I've defaulted to yellow cabs recently a few times.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We want more convenience. And for many years, ride-hail apps, Uber was original, were more convenient. But beyond a certain point, the pendulum shifts back and pricing, availability, and
certain
traffic.
Circumstances, right? You know, if I'm at my house, I'm using Uber or Lyft because the idea of calling a cab and then not knowing exactly what time it'll be there, that convenience of that app is hard to deny. But at the same time, it's also Uber and Lyft have unquestionably caused more congestion in my city by just being cars that are just driving around. Unquestionably caused more traffic at the airport, which is how they ended up with this off-site lot in the first place. And now that off-site lot is there, by the time I get to that lot, I might as well just get in the yellow cab because there it is.
It is interesting. I think soon, I don't think we've seen it yet, but soon we will see a really good history of the last, say, 10 to 15 years of ride-hail and public transit. Because I'd love to know how many more cars were put onto city streets because Uber and Lyft exist than picking up rides and as hail drivers than there were when there were only yellow cabs and in some case like the black cabs in London.
In that Paris Marx book, Road to Nowhere, I can't quote, I can't quote the number, but it's significant.
It's significant. And so
it's double-digit percentages.
There's road space is something. Public road space, there's a point beyond which you can't build anymore.
Yeah.
And if you
the tunnels, bro.
You just
need infinite tunnels.
And so there is, on one hand, you want to increase throughput, and the best way to do that is a train.
Yeah.
And after that, a bus. And then after that, walking, and probably somewhere near the bottom is
more cars.
An individual person in a car.
Yeah.
However, because of the geography of this country, which is different east to west, there are entire cities where people live in places that are only accessible by car.
Yeah.
So that tension between those two very different geographies is where new technologies are trying to land and find product market fit. Which is why the notion that any one technology can solve everything for everyone makes no sense.
Yeah.
AVs will be a lot more useful and effective in some places than others. And anyone who tells you otherwise is looking for a headline and not a solution. That's why, if...
Do you feel that Americans are really ready for the sharing economy of shared AVs? I feel like so many people love their cars.
Some people are, but I mean, look, there are people of all political persuasions who do, pool rides of their kids to school.
Yeah.
Who aren't going to hire a driver and they have to go to work, so they're not taking their kids to school themselves, or they're taking turns with their parents. In Miami, where I live, I talk to people in different neighborhoods, and one of the questions I ask, and I want to know, Argo wants to know, is how many people in this neighborhood don't have a car, and it's hard for their kids to get to school. Or if they have a car, they can't take their kids to work in their car themselves because they have to get to work. And what is the social structure? What is the informal social structure in this neighborhood which allows for sharing or pooling to exist for kids or the elderly? So that answer is different in every neighborhood, and an app doesn't always solve it. And in fact, it's probably been going on for decades without an app. Mm-hmm. And that is something that AV might solve if you ask in advance where it needs solving.
Yeah.
And then provide that to those people here. Because if you drop a fleet of cars that are autonomous on a city without asking in advance, can you use them? Do you want them? Who needs them?
That's the bird scooters.
Yeah.
We just woke up one day and there they were.
Yeah, and then they were gone. We all.
Then they were thrown into the river.
Any student of history, of transportation history, knows that going into a city plan in general were good intentions. Not always, but in general. Obviously, there are people with bad intentions who will bulldoze a minority or immigrant neighborhood to build a highway.
Yeah.
Bad intention.
Segregation by design on Instagram.
It exists.
Look it up.
So, the notion that you can drop technology in a city just one tenant and hopefully that doesn't work. It's also inefficient. It's nice. It's headline making. Fleet deployed in city, but in reality, what is valuable is are you putting vehicles where there's demand, but also improving the city for real?
Yeah.
Because if you only ever move tourists, you're just moving. The hotels benefit.
Yeah.
Maybe local restaurants benefit, but do the people who live there benefit beyond the people who work for the hotels and restaurants?
Yeah.
And so you want to do something about transit deserts, and you want to know in advance. It's very expensive to have a depot and a bunch of cars that no one's riding in.
Yeah.
And it also, imagine 2 companies arrive in a city, or 4, and they all offer autonomous vehicles, and they're all equally good. Just suppose. Well, which company are the people of that city going to want to use? They're going to want to use the one that arrived in the city, and before they deployed, that company asked permission, said, who needs help? How can we help you?
Yeah.
Because what if we don't just service the tourists? What if we also do this neighborhood? And what if we start with, paratransit? My mom's getting older, and she can't drive.
Yeah.
So, paratransit services are usually not great.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of, the notion that autonomous vehicles aren't necessarily going to just be a driverless car. I think there's going to be a universe of new companies is going to emerge around them. And there's a company, a very interesting company, and I guess I'm kind of plugging them. I don't know them. I have no relation with them, called Get Papa. It's basically assistance for your parents on demand.
Sounds good.
And it's a Miami-based company. And, if you need someone to help your mom with groceries, you need someone to help take your dad to the doctor, they'll do things like that.
And these are humans.
Yeah.
These are humans.
They'll provide a person.
Human in a car.
And so they may or may not have a car.
Yeah.
But I could see if you glued that together with an autonomous vehicle fleet, that would solve a huge problem for me and my mom, she spent the summer with me.
More than a human driving a car?
Well, my mother does not know how to use the Uber or Lyft app.
Oh,
she has no idea.
Yeah.
And she doesn't speak Spanish. And in Miami, it's very tough to get a driver who's perfect, fluent. Let's just say my mother, my German accent in mind is
German accent.
It's not going to land for her.
Right.
And so
I'm getting questions ready. Go on.
It's not going to land for her. And so there is a clear use case for an entire swath of the population for whom no elegant solution exists today.
Sure.
So there's a universe of opportunity for companies that are honest about what they can do and go look for that product market fit. And there's a universe of disappointment for people who think no one's ever going to drive again, no one needs to own a car again, and these things are going to solve everything from heaven. No technology in history has ever been like that.
Yeah.
It's like people promise
too.
Jetpacks. We're all going to have jetpacks and flying cars. Look at the Jetsons.
Yeah.
It's silly.
Yeah.
And it's not helpful.
No, but I think if you look at AV as a solution for a person who can no longer drive,
well, the thing is
that's a good.
I'd love to own a car that would, in some circumstances, just do the driving. I'd love that.
Yeah.
I also would love, I'd love to for AVs to show up reliably and on time.
JF just texted me and says, "At your door." While I look at the questions real quick, will you unclip your microphone and go look at our door?
Sure, I will.
And see if he's there. Slate.
Then I've got.
Don't open all the way.
I'll tell you when I come back.
Okay, well, we're still recording. Let's see if JF is there. Oh. Hey, buddy.
Is he coming outside?
He can't come outside.
We're podcasting. Come on.
What's going on?
Don't say
we
a
are
word.
recording.
Don't say something really important.
Uh-oh. I lost my fuzzy.
Oh, I love this setup.
So
This is how we do it. This is ghetto. It works. Okay.
And so another thing too, and this is, every time I reread these histories of other technologies, I learn something. There are driver shortages.
Yeah.
And there were, in the late 19th century, labor shortages for elevator operators.
Oh, you told me about this last
and
show.
I actually didn't realize the extent of it.
Yeah.
And so Otis acquired a number of companies doing automation for elevators because they couldn't fulfill orders for companies who were buying elevators that had manual controls.
Yeah.
And so that tension lasted for decades, and I had no idea. I always try to say that I'm not trying to plug my employer because I'm trying to be agnostic and like a good faith operator. But there's going to be mixed fleets of AV and human ride-hail vehicles for a long time.
I bet.
And that's going to depend on the city and on a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And it's just the notion that any of this is binary is just silly and unrealistic.
Yeah.
And the greatest business success will come for the companies that outlast the hype and actually deploy solutions that work and under-promise and over-deliver.
Sure. I like that. We got a few questions from the Patreon. Of course, patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast. Get the show live when we're not in a hotel in Germany. You can listen to it without ads, ask questions of our guests, and of course, you get an extra show every month. Ryan Morris says, Alex, I lived by Argo's location in Pittsburgh. Other than CMU, why is Pittsburgh a good location for testing? Is it just where Brian Selesky lived? Is that the only reason?
Well, other than CMU, that's like saying, other than the ocean is full of water, where else is good for fishing? That's a pretty big reason.
Yeah.
And that's the reason.
Is there something about the geography of Pittsburgh as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Pittsburgh is it's a complicated city geographically, very hilly with all four seasons.
Yeah.
You will learn pretty much everything you need to know about all four seasons in Pittsburgh, plus hills and geography. It's very tough.
So that's good.
It's tough,
okay,
yeah.
so there is something about
there's
it.
a lot.
Also, what's your favorite restaurant in Pittsburgh? If you have one.
I'm a big fan of Denoya's Eatery on the Strip. If you enjoy Italian food, but especially if you don't,
all right,
you will enjoy eating there.
Good plug.
It's a really good spot.
Derek Yegan, what European forbidden fruit cars have you seen this trip that got you really excited? Well, I was at the Alpina factory yesterday, and they have something called a B5 Touring, which is a 3 Series wagon with the engine from the B8. So it was a 620 horsepower twin turbo V8 in a 3 Series wagon, and it is fucking delightful in every way.
Yeah,
that is superior.
That excites me. The car you're driving, the V8, yeah, that thing is crazy.
In oligarch green.
I was shocked at the older woman in the parking lot. Nice car.
People are really into. I think it's because we're in Bavaria. Is BMW land here.
Yeah.
But people are very into that Alpina in this part of the world.
It's really fancy.
Randy says, as someone who's held both EV and gasoline cannonball records, will an EV ever beat the gas record, and how long do you think it will take for that to happen?
I was asked that exact question last week at the Global Cannonball Reunion, and I alone in a room full of people said, yes, absolutely an EV will break it, but I can't give you a timeline.
Not with our current rate of charge.
So, no. I think we need... So if, let's say, a Lucid with 500 miles range and a perfectly operating Electrify America network. Mm-hmm. Perfect.
350s at 350.
Yeah. If it was perfect, I think a Lucid could go in like 35, 36 hours. Yeah. 37, maybe?
Mate Ramatz told me the Navara can charge at 500.
Okay.
And I go, where is there a 500? And they go, at our factory.
Yeah, of course. So if you take the Irwin Baker times from 1915 through 1930, and you chart his record and the time dropping based on the construction of gas station networks, and then you overlay that against the drop in electric cannonball times. I think we need one more generation of car, and one more generation of charger. So call it within 10 years.
10 years, okay.
Because we've reached the physical limits of
driving.
Yeah, of tire safety.
Yeah.
Given road quality.
Yeah.
And traffic density for a safe drive.
Right. We pretty much covered Nick's question before. RD Speed Garage wants German tourist recommendations. They're going to pick up GT3s from Leipzig, and what should they do? Drive in the mountains. Go south to Switzerland and Italy immediately, and then eat lots of pretzels.
I would also suggest
unlimited sections of Autobahn.
There's I think what's called the Richter Playground Factory. There's a company that I think it's named Richter, is that right? Which they are one of the largest, most respected designers and manufacturers of playground equipment.
Okay.
And they have a facility not far from here where you can see on display all the different types of playgrounds.
God, if my wife was here, she'd be like, give me the car keys.
And
she'd be there already.
If you go on Twitter and look for Tara Pham, Pham. She's the founder and CEO of a fascinating company called Numina. And she told me about this place. And for anyone, the child inside of us will want to see this place.
I want to, yeah.
So.
And find yourself in Austria, do some alpine coasters. Mm-hmm. Those are the jam. Strom Speed, we haven't heard any speakers yet, so we don't have an answer to that question. We just got here. Top pick for an Autobahn car. I mean, anything that'll do 200 stable. This Alpina B8, I saw 294 kilometers an hour in that yesterday, which is pretty strong. It's a pretty strong number.
In 2007, I was on the gumball. 2006, on the gumball with a friend who had a Bentley GT. It was raining.
Superior.
Yeah, it was raining heavily, and we looked at each other and said, "We should slow down. We should slow down because 250 kilometers an hour might be excessive. Let's slow down at 220.
Yeah,
like it'll be okay." So we slow down at 220, and a car approached us from behind in the left lane with lane of flashing, and so we moved to the right to let them pass, and it was like a Renault 5 Turbo, like an old one. like, wow.
Yeah.
So it is whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
If you have the skill.
Also 911 Turbo.
Yeah.
911 Turbo S. Well, look, all of our gear has made it through the show. We didn't have any batteries die. So we'll have another show, possibly, from my balcony in room 303 at the Das Tegernsee Hotel. It's quite lovely here. This view is fucking epic. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for introducing me to the people who invited me here. Thanks to JF for standing in the corner.
Let it be said, they were all fans of yours from long before I made the introduction. So.